Hi there, and welcome back to the Energy Sector Heroes podcast. My name is Michelle Fraser, and every week I will speak with incredible people who share their lessons, experiences, and stories from their time spent in the energy sector. Hi there, and welcome back again to this week's episode. If you're new to the show, then please take a second to subscribe and even consider sharing the show with just one other person. This week, I am joined by Dennis Banks. Dennis started his career as a chemical process engineer and has climbed the career ladder to Vice President of Maintenance, which I'm actually quite excited about to learn how he was able to do that. Very amazing. Dennis, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Oh, yeah. So, good day. Name is Dennis Banks, originally born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, Louisiana State University graduate in chemical engineering in 1993, and currently living in Fort McMurray, Alberta, Canada, and blessed to have the opportunity to serve as the current vice president of maintenance at our Syncrude oil sands facility.
No, that's amazing, actually. And I have been reading up on you, and you've actually had quite an amazing career. So, how did you get started off in the energy sector?
Well, growing up in Detroit, being a first generation university student, all of my siblings, I'm one of six, left high school, went straight into automotive because that was the thing to do, right? My dad, he spent 38 years with Ford, and all of my siblings wanted to follow in a similar footstep, with the one exception. I had kind of a desire to develop the fuel to go into the cars, not necessarily develop the car itself. There was a lot of that in my family. I wanted to do something different, so that got me on a journey right into chemical engineering. I was always very good at math and science during high school and middle school, so it seemed like the natural path to go, and started my university career at Michigan Tech University, transferred to Louisiana State, and then went on from there. Having had the opportunity, again, I would say the blessing to be able to co-op and intern with some fantastic companies like Dow Chemical, Mobil Oil, FINA, and British Petroleum prior to entering into the job market as a professional.
Okay. So, what made you follow down the career path of becoming a chemical process engineer?
I think it literally was a sort of, having had the ability to test it out, try before buy, as an intern and co-op when I was a freshman in university, kind of really solidified my choice in chemical engineering and in the energy field. I enjoyed my coursework originally, and then married that coursework with practical experience, and it just kept fueling my desire to continue, and that got me all the way through to graduation and into professional life. Many of my peers that I graduated high school with, some wanted to be doctors or lawyers. I knew I wanted to be an engineer. And when I got into chemical engineering, it felt like the right niche for me. And, it's been great ever since, to be honest.
Okay. So, what do you enjoy most about your job then?
I think I've never really considered myself in a job. It was always sort of like, this is a career, this is part of who I am, and to me, a job is something, you punch a clock 9 to 5, and then you go on with the rest of your day. My day, starts and ends thinking about work or thinking about my profession. And I've been blessed to have been moved around and been able to enjoy different aspects of the energy sector, from pure engineering to operations to project work, economics and planning, and then into maintenance. So the one thing I would say that I enjoy most about this career and this industry is the vast diversification and variety of choices that are out there for professionals to be able to enjoy a long-lasting and fruitful career. I mean, it's not just about, having different opportunities. It's the ability to go wide, and try different things out during one's career, but one can also go deep and omit diversification. And that's what I like about this industry is that you have the ability to do all, none, or both. It's really exciting.
Okay. Do you think it is important to have not necessarily a job, but a career that you really love?
I do. I do. I mean, to me, like I was a busboy at a smorgasbord restaurant in Detroit. That was a job, right? I was a porter on a boblo boat. It was a amusement park boat there between Detroit and Canada. That was a job, and I look forward to, getting to work, and even looked more favorably upon the time to clock out. The difference for me is, I don't clock in, clock out. My every day is a different adventure, and the responsibility we have in this sector in energy to provide, necessary commodities to society to be able to enjoy quality of life such as it is. And that's inspiring, and I find that to be an awesome responsibility that I take a lot of pride in.
It is because, yeah, it is quite a really big, significant responsibility to keep even like maybe a power plant or an oil and gas platform up and running. It is an immense. It is an immense responsibility, I think.
It
So
is.
it is actually, and it's very hard as well.
Well,
So
when you think about it, I tell, we do a lot of tours, and I get a chance to bring in a lot of, students from trade schools to engineering schools, and even some of the local high school students. It strikes you when you come into a facility, any oil and gas, any energy facility, you have to start thinking everything this place this is designed to produce, its primary purpose is to burn and explode. Think about the combustion engine, right? Think about all the explosions that take place in our cars, in our jets, and the trucks going up and down the highway. That's what our commodity, that's what the fuel is designed to do. And it gives you a bit of respect. We don't make ice cream, we're not making clothing, and that is another piece of, I guess, pride is being able to do what we do as well as we do and drive a certain level of process and personal safety. I say it often, one of the biggest pride points I have is each and every day, individuals coming into our facility, thousands that come through the gate each and every day to do great work, to feed their families, to contribute to society, coming to work and leaving the same way they came. That's a very important aspect of our work is taking pride in safely delivering these commodities to market.
So it must be really challenging being a vice president of maintenance. What is the most challenging aspect of your job?
I think the biggest challenge is really, being ever present and ever aware of the changing landscape by which we operate in, right? You have, the dynamic of people, which is, one of our most important commodities of all the things we deal with at a facility, multi-billion dollar facility. Our people is our number one, and every person has a different, set of circumstances. And then you're also dealing with, weather, you're dealing with markets, you're dealing with just, every day is a different opportunity, and being ready and present to be able to tackle those challenges with vigor and with passion. And to me, that's usually the biggest challenge, and it's what fuels most of us at this level in this space. I would say, having talked to peers and others in this industry.
I think that would be challenging as well. So I was going to ask you, because you've had such an amazing career and you've progressed quite far in your career, I would think relatively quickly, because you look very young actually, as I'm looking at you. What advice would you give to the younger students and graduates about tips on how to progress your career?
Have purpose and passion, and don't presuppose. I guess those, unfortunately, they all start with P, but it fits. If you think about it, you have to be able to do what you love and love what you do. I think in this industry, having that purpose and being able to be a bit ambidextrous, a bit flexible, to be able to seize opportunities. I didn't grow up in Canada, but here I am. I didn't necessarily grow up in Louisiana or Texas, but those were some of the most, impactful times of my career. And, many youth that I talk to that are going into university, may have a preconception of what their success will look like. And I would say it's good to have that North Star, to have that purpose, right? But also being flexible to be able to navigate through the changes that life bring to get the best out of whatever situation or circumstance comes our way, and not be deterred by headwinds, because there's always going to be obstacles, right? Some will be quite seen, and some will obviously be unseen. And I think some of the things we learn in university, that's why, I think engineering is one of the hardest programs in university, because if you can get through, and graduate, it really gives you, the muscles and the stamina to be able to deal with anything that comes our way. And I think that's what's really needed is being really, really clear on what success looks like, and not trying to be like anyone else. It's very easy to say, I want to be like Dennis. Well, no, no, you don't. You want to be like you. And you need the time to really formulate who that you is, and be willing to listen to the strong and weak signals around us. And I think too often, many go into industry like ours thinking they need to be the next CEO. There's only going to be one CEO of any company, right? And as that pyramid gets higher and higher, I don't, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that the opportunities get smaller and smaller as you get closer to the top of that peak. And I'm saying that to say this: it is a competitive space, and it takes a lot of hard work, but there's always room at the top, and it may look different for everyone. Not everyone's going to peak out at the same place, and you have to be very satisfied with what life brings your way, but satisfied, but you never have to settle. And said a lot, but it's a lot to unpack with that question.
It is. And you said a couple of really interesting things there. And one of them was you have to be able to stand out and be yourself. That would be really difficult. How would you go about even doing that?
Well, you know what? I tried going down the road of several great thespians early in my career. I tried acting, and what I found when I did my first musical, Fantastics. This is a true story. I was exhausted at the end of the performance, right? Exhausted. And each and every time I would get up for the performance when I knew it was showtime. But at the end, I just wanted to crash. I say that to say this. It's way easier to be who we are, to be our authentic selves each and every day, versus trying to put on a cloak or put on a different costume to go into some workplace and be something that we're not. That's exhausting. And I've always vowed that I would never do that since I stopped pursuing acting as a pastime, and I've always tried to be exactly who I am each and every day. And if it doesn't fit in, if the key doesn't fit into the first lock, I just find another door. I can't change who I am, and I think that has, among many other things, has made this career fun for me because I don't have to pretend to be something I'm not.
I think that's really wise words, and I really like that answer actually. I like that answer a lot actually. So did also mention before that the higher up the career ladder you go, the more competitive it is. Is it really like that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's lonely at the top because there's not very many there. And not many make it there, but that doesn't mean that, it also doesn't mean that it's for everyone. I remember even when I was going into university, just thinking about just the sheer geometry of a triangle, and that, it's harder and harder to climb up, but there's also less and less space every time you move up. And it's the same in life. It's the same in the workplace. And I think that struggle can lead to success and can lead to frustration for those who don't have, that inner strength, understand their purpose, and can adapt well to changing situations. But it absolutely is a very competitive environment, no matter what industry you go to and go through. You're always competing with someone for something, and just being aware of that. It doesn't make it something to be afraid of. It's natural, whether you're dating or competing for space in a corporation, there's always competition.
There is always competition, but how do you deal with the competition though?
You have to be secure in who you are. You know what you bring to the table. I tell a lot. So I'm blessed now to be able to mentor, several professionals. And one of the things, a story I tell them is around, we have this bottled water in North America called Fiji. It's a very expensive bottle of water. That Fiji bottle, if I go down to the corner store, it may be $3.99, right? Nominal price. I go down to the airport, right? That same bottle of water, no different, no different. It'll be like $5, $6, And then when I get off the airplane, I get to, a nice hotel and I go into the concierge and ask for a bottle of Fiji. It may be $8, $9. Where am I going? I don't, the vessel doesn't change, the content doesn't change, but it depends on the location. And a lot of times our value may be better realized by being able to move to a different location, changing the context or the dynamics, or changing the scenario or circumstance could be refreshing for those that are, going through their career and may get stuck, feel stagnant, or not feel like they're being able to receive their true worth. And that's hard for people who define a particular path and are rigid versus those that are, have the ability to be a bit fluid, be a bit ambidextrous, if you will, and also to allow themselves to take chances on themselves, which takes a bit of courage as well. So, I use that a lot when I talk to mentor or mentees. And many will say, are you trying to get me to leave the company? No, I'm trying to get you to value yourself over everyone else, and make sure you understand what you bring and how you bring your best, and see that best is valued and realized no matter where you are and no matter where you go. And I have two girls, and I tell this story to my daughters often because I don't want any human being that they take up with, for company, for friendship, for companionship, to ever value them any less than they value themselves. And that's always something I try to teach my kids, and I teach those that I'm blessed to have within my circles of influence.
I think it is important to be able to maybe one company or friends or companions don't value you, that you should maybe move to somewhere that does. Is it quite important to do that?
I think it's always important to be happy, and it doesn't mean you have to always chase circumstances that are better because I've met and worked with people who were very happy in the circumstances they were in. They weren't seeking anything more than happiness. Then why change, right? And that's the other thing. You can't always define one's success by what someone else did, right? It's sort of like that dog looking at their reflection in a lake when they have a bone in their mouth, and that reflection looks so much grander and more glorious. They want that bone, and they end up chasing something and losing everything. And that's kind of the thought that I try to give people is, it really depends on your circumstance and what's important.
I agree, actually. That is wise words. So you were saying that you are a mentor to quite a few your colleagues. What is your best advice that you've given them?
I think, to me, it's know who you are, know what you bring, and know what you value the most. And having that North Star well defined can be so liberating for a career, right? And I think there's nothing takes the place of happiness, right? Monetary gains, materialistic treasures mean nothing if one isn't truly happy. And that's the hardest part. We work hard in school, we work hard in life, taking care of our minds, our bodies, our physical circumstances. But at the end of the day, if we are truly not happy, none of it matters. And you hear of so many people who succumb to those types of negative pressures. Many have everything one could ever imagine, but they don't have peace and they don't have happiness. And it's everything else is worthless. That's the one thing I try to tell folks that I talk to is find that space of happiness, define what that is, and be unrelenting and don't settle because it just it doesn't pay off. And everyone's definition of success and happiness is different from another's, right? So it's no one size fits all.
Okay. So if a young graduate wanted to climb the career ladder, what advice would you give them? Because a lot of them want to progress quite quickly, whereas others might not be so eager.
It goes back to defining that why. What do what are we climbing to? What are you in search of? And what can you get the most? What can you get most out of where you are? And that last one is one of the most important ones I tell a lot of folks that are early in career. It's maximizing the opportunities they have before someone's ever going to give them something more. You have to do the most with what you got. And many are so busy trying to grab that next rung on the ladder, they're not looking well to their current station and giving the organization and themselves the opportunity to maximize the opportunity that they have to demonstrate capabilities that others may see such good work and want to elevate them out of one circumstances into another. And but so often, yes, many of our young professionals are very eager, right? They're keen. They are often impatient. But you do yourself no favors to matriculate through a set of circumstances, climb a ladder if you never get anything out of the preceding rungs of said ladder. Because each and every opportunity builds upon itself if you're in a credible company and it prepares you for future obstacles and opportunities to come. And if you pass today up, you're not going to be prepared for tomorrow. And that's the one thing I try to tell people is do the most You can, the best you can with what you have before you ever start thinking someone owes you more than that.
Okay, I was going to ask you a question actually. There is a myth, or maybe it's not a myth, that if you're if you're really good at your job, and you know if you're really good at your job and you know, well, not everybody knows everything, but if you think that you know everything about your job and you're very good at it, is it harder to get promoted? Because if these because some people say if you're really good, then you really get stuck. Is that true or false?
I think it really depends. Specialization has its place in so many in different companies, and some companies that I've worked for, they value specialization and depth, not breadth, but depth of knowledge. And a lot of times most companies I've worked for, they are willing to compensate for said development that is narrow and deep to make sure that people can feel that they are still progressing. So promotion in and of itself has that financial connection and connotation, but not every promotion comes with a title, right? But it comes back to understanding your worth, your value, and what's most important. I have peers that I started my career with that are just as well compensated but are in a very similar titled role than they were when we first started. They may be senior engineer, principal engineer, but they are still in a very technical role. They're doing what they love. They love what they do. They have purpose, and they're able to see themselves progress financially. And that goes back to that Fiji water, it may be, if one is feeling that level that stickiness around them that they're not they're not satisfied. They may need to, like LeBron, take their talents to a different organization where their capabilities and what they bring to the table is better observed and recognized and rewarded. But again, you can't, and everyone wants to chase titles, where why not chase value? Why not chase the opportunity to be the most that you can be and be rewarded for that?
I think that is true, actually. But there is a lot of people that chase titles.
Mhm. It's unfortunate because that does run out at a certain point in time, right? Because there's only so many, like I said, there's only going to be so many vice presidents in a company. There's only going to be so many CEOs in a company. There'll be one, right? So if you keep chasing titles, at some point you're going to run out of you're going to run out of titles to chase, and then what, right? It can be a very exhausting, unsatisfying journey if that's what success and satisfaction looks like. It's very superficial.
Okay. I never really thought about it like that. Okay. That's an interesting concept. So, with the energy transition going on right across the world, how do you think that the careers of the up and coming graduates would look like?
So I don't think we're really looking at an energy transition. I think we're looking at energy addition. I think there will be more choices for the consumer to take advantage of. I think said consumer, they will speak with their wallets. They will speak with how they consume energy, and then the market will have to adjust itself to be able to meet the needs of the consumer. Oftentimes we forget this is all consumer driven, consumer sentiments, and I look around the communities that I've lived in. I don't see a lot of people going out buying electric vehicles, right? I don't see a lot of folks going out camping and pulling their beautiful camping gear with a horse and buggy, right? They're not. They're consuming energy in the way they want to consume it, and their buying power is being leveraged to receive goods and services in the way they demand and want it. Nobody, now, I don't see a lot of people chopping wood either, right? So, we're powering our homes with with fossil fueled commodities, and we're going to continue doing that for the foreseeable future, but there will be more choices for the consumer. And as those choices brings about economies of scale, which may be more affordable to the consumer, then I can absolutely see a day where, consumers have a breadth of choices that may lend itself to different energy streams that would be more conducive to the additional energies coming on to the market. But as far as I can see, motor fueled or motor driven vehicles, jets, cargo planes, passenger planes, and don't forget all of our seagoing vessels are likely going to be fueled by some type of hydrocarbon for the foreseeable future, with an additional choice of other types of energy products being introduced into the market as scale and affordability can meet itself. So if I'm coming into this space as a new engineer, I'm freaking excited. I'm excited about what I could bring with all of the new tools and techniques I'm learning in today's university to be a part of that solution for energy that I know society will need. No one's going to want to go backwards, right? No one's going to want to unplug. AI is going to consume a lot more energy, right? We all want faster, better, bigger data. We all want to be able to get where we're trying to go faster, quicker, safer. That doesn't lend itself to going backwards. It lends itself to just being able to go and continue going forward. When my grandparents were thinking about travel, it was likely in a locomotive, in a train, right? And now look at where we are. And think about where we are today compared to what our children and my grandchildren to be, what they will enjoy will far surpass where we are today. And it's going to take the talent coming out of university, the engineers and scientists to go into this industry and make it all that it can be today with our current technology and tomorrow's technology that they will define and resource and care for. I'm excited about the additional energy coming into the market and what this means for me as a current and future consumer of said energy.
Okay. Do you think that it is an exciting time for new up and coming graduates then to come into the energy space?
I do, because and I talk to a lot of graduates that think, oh, the industry is dying. Well, when I look out on the highway, there's a lot of petrol being consumed, a lot of vehicles on the road. People are still traveling, and I think last I checked, winter comes and goes, summer comes and goes. We still want to be comfortable in our homes, right? So the needs are ever present and ever increasing. It's how we meet those needs with a demand that meets I would say, expectations of an ever growing population with sentiment and thoughts that are also going to evolve over the course of time as we think about climate, as we think about greenhouse gas emissions, as we think about how we care for our earth and the sustainability. It's going to take all of the brain power coming out of university to be able to figure all of these equations out into a sustainable solution that meets all of our needs into the future.
Okay. Because there is quite a lot of people that think that the energy sector is maybe all played out. You don't think it'll ever be like that?
I don't. I don't. I think as energy products come to market, as energy addition continues, we're going to have our industry will continue to pivot. We'll still continue to have a base, but we'll have to broaden that base to meet the needs of the consumer. This is all consumer driven. Make no mistake, you wouldn't have the number of refineries operating across the world, the amount of drilling, the amount of exploration that's going on, if you didn't have people driving to the pump to consume said products in their very expensive commodities that they're driving.
I think I actually agree. Actually, I think that the energy sector, in one way or another, is going to be here for a very long time. We're not going
So
to
we
get.
bear the brunt. If people get mad over something or, oh, blame the energy company. Well, you know, I grew up in a very bad neighborhood. I grew up in Detroit, okay? And I saw a lot of things growing up, but I never blamed the addict for his addiction. They were a consumer of a product that they demanded, right? Did that make sense?
It
No, I
does.
didn't go blaming the drug pusher. Of course, I blame the addict. Of course, I wanted the addict to get better. I wanted the addict to change their habits so they were less of a consumer of a product that was killing them. I wasn't going to blame the addict. I mean, the drug pusher for being the salesperson that was meeting the needs of the consumers. I blame the consumers. We in society we want to go after big oil. No, I mean this is a free society. If we're not meeting that need, someone else will, because the consumer still will demand products that they are have grown accustomed to, because it has created a sense of comfort in today's life. So heal the consumer. Bring more products to the consumer that's at an acceptable price point, and then I guarantee you that supply will meet the demands of the consumer.
I really like that actually.
That's a tough one because it's always it's opposite what people think. And I grew up. I used to hate to see individuals in my neighborhood turn into zombies, but I wasn't going to blame the dealer. Blame the situation that the individuals put themselves in, because they were the huge consumer. And now, yes, that's an extreme visual because of the negative effects that drugs and alcohol have had on many of our society. But you can make that parallel to energy, and look at those of us who live in our homes. Sure, I can turn, when it's below zero, I can turn my thermostat to 60. It sure feels better at 68, right, than it does at 60. But I can survive at a lower temperature. I choose not to. But by making that choice, I am going to consume more energy. And that energy will come at the expense of what? Consuming more fossil fuels at the end of the day. It's going, it all kind of balances out. Our habits, our choices do play a part into, how society and the market will move.
I agree. I agree. I was going to ask you another question, but I think I'm just going to leave it there in that very wise words. I knew you would be amazing, actually.
Everyone has a different point of view, right? I think the more you talk to people, the more you find that everyone sees things differently. And I think that's the beauty of our world, right? The diversification of thought and our free spirit and our ability to be able to share points of view. I think is so very important in a free world.
I think so too, actually. I think so too. Well, that's all the questions I have today. I would like to thank Dennis for your time. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening, and see you next week. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, I'd like to gently encourage you to leave a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts, and share the show with another person. You can also follow me on LinkedIn or via my website, www.michellefraserconsultancy.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.